I'm going to have to ask you to step out of this cabin." The words landed like a slap. Adeline Pierce looked up, startled. The first-class pod around her was silent, sterile, almost too calm. She blinked behind her noise-canceling headphones, unsure she'd heard right. "Excuse me?" she asked softly. The flight attendant, a woman in her 50s, with bleached hair pulled tight and a forced smile, leaned closer. Her name tag read Charlene. "This section is reserved for premium passengers," Charlene said, voice low but icy. "That includes people who are dressed appropriately and don't bring unauthorized medical devices." All eyes weren't on Charlene. They were on Adeline. Hoodie, weighted blanket, sensory headphones. She hadn't even spoken since boarding, and yet somehow she was already the problem. Ever been judged without saying a word? "Tell us where you're watching from." The man in seat 1B slowly lowered his newspaper. Adeline clutched the corner of her boarding pass. "I have a seat assignment, 1A. "We'll see about that," Charlene said, snatching the pass. Her eyes narrowed as she scanned it. She read the name like it couldn't be real. "Adeline Pierce, 1A. She hesitated. Too long. Charlene handed it back with a forced grin. "You'll need to remove the headphones before takeoff, and we can't allow blankets not issued by the airline." Adeline's fingers twitched. The blanket calmed her heart rate. The headphones dulled the world to something survivable. She had medical documentation, but knew from experience that most people didn't care. "I have a sensory condition," she said. "My doctor—" "I'm not a doctor," Charlene cut her off, "but I know policy." With that, she turned and disappeared down the aisle. Adeline sat frozen. Not again. She'd followed every rule, paid for her seat, worn her name tag, said nothing, and still, somehow, she wasn't supposed to be here. The knot in her stomach tightened. She hadn't even taken off yet. And already, she wanted to go home. 10 minutes later, Charlene returned. This time, she wasn't smiling. Behind her trailed a gate agent, early 20s, nervous, holding a tablet, and 2 airport security officers. One was tall, expressionless. The other, older, looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Adeline felt the shift in air pressure before a single word was spoken. Charlene pointed straight at her. "That's her, seat 1A. She's refusing to comply with crew instructions and has unauthorized medical gear." The younger officer raised an eyebrow. "What kind of gear?" "She won't remove her headphones," Charlene snapped. "And she's wrapped in something weighted. I don't feel safe having her on board." Adeline's hands trembled under her blanket. "She hasn't said a word to me," said the man in 1B quietly. Charlene ignored him. "We asked her to remove the devices. She refused." "I didn't refuse," Adeline finally said, voice thin but steady. "I explained my condition." The gate agent hesitated. "She has a first-class boarding pass, verified through our system." Charlene's voice turned sharp. "There may have been a glitch. You can't just scan a barcode and assume—" "I scanned it," the agent cut in. "It's valid." The older officer stepped forward. "Ma'am," he said to Adeline, "I need you to step off the aircraft with us for a quick conversation." "No," she said, quietly but firmly. "I haven't done anything wrong. And I can't go back through that crowd. It's too loud." Charlene folded her arms. Now she's refusing a lawful request from airport security. The man in 1B spoke again, louder this time. "You're escalating this without cause." The officer looked between them. "Ma'am, if you don't comply, we may have to remove you physically." That was it. The sentence landed like a hammer. Adeline slowly reached for her phone with trembling fingers. She didn't want to cry. Not yet. Not in front of them. But she knew exactly who to call. And he never let her down. Adeline's thumb hovered over one name. Dad. Not Colin Pierce. Not BlueShield executive. Just Dad. The officer stood there, waiting. Charlene had crossed her arms in triumph. The gate agent looked like she might cry. Adeline pressed call. The phone rang once, twice, then... "Sweetheart?" His voice was calm, low, like always. She swallowed hard. "Dad, they're trying to take me off the plane." Silence. She could picture him now, probably in that glass conference room in Geneva, surrounded by lawyers and consultants, calmly setting down his pen. "Where are you?" he asked, already moving. "Flight 448, JFK to Munich, first class. They said my headphones aren't allowed. That I don't belong." There was a pause. Not empty, heavy. Then his voice changed. It was no longer Dad. It was Colin Pierce, Chief Compliance Officer of BlueShield Aeroethica, the man who wrote the protocols that airports used to measure ethical treatment on aircraft. "Stay in your seat," he said evenly. "Is the flight attendant's name Charlene?" Adeline blinked. "Yes?" "Do not argue. Do not leave your seat. Do not hang up." Charlene leaned closer. "Phones need to be turned off now, miss." Adeline turned slightly, letting her voice cut through without shouting. "My father would like to speak with you." Charlene snorted. "We're past that." From the aisle, the younger officer asked, "Who is your father exactly?" Adeline didn't flinch. "The man who controls your airline's access to 61 airports." It was quiet after that. Charlene didn't speak. The officers didn't move. And Adeline, still trembling, handed the phone to the one person who still looked unsure. The gate agent. "Please," Adeline whispered. "He's not going to yell. He's going to end this." She took a deep breath, staring forward, trying to keep the room from spinning. She wasn't safe yet, but she wasn't alone anymore, and someone was about to find out exactly who they'd messed with. The gate agent hesitated, staring at Adeline's phone. "Take it," she said quietly. "He's not going to shout." The woman finally lifted the phone to her ear. "Hello." What she heard made her posture snap straight. "Yes, sir. I understand. Yes, she's safe. We're still on the ground." Charlene leaned over. "Who is she talking to?" The agent didn't answer. Her eyes flicked to the officer, then to Adeline. Then she held out the phone. "Officer Monroe?" she said, voice brittle. "He'd like a word with you." Monroe took the phone, eyebrows raised. "Hello. This is Officer..." He paused. Whatever he was expecting on the other end, it wasn't what he got. "Yes, sir. I was told the passenger, the young woman, was non-compliant." "No, I didn't review her boarding pass myself." "Yes, I understand now." His face drained slowly. "My badge number? 29461. Yes, sir." By now, the front of the cabin had gone silent. The businessman in 1B was watching intently. Even Charlene, smug just moments earlier, looked uneasy. Monroe's shoulders stiffened. "No, sir. I wasn't aware of her condition. We weren't given medical context." "Yes." She remained seated and calm. "I understand that now." He pulled the phone slightly away, then glanced at Charlene. "He wants your full name," he said, "and your employee ID." Charlene blinked. "Excuse me?" "Name, ID, now." She sputtered, caught off guard. I'm not required to..." "He says you have 15 seconds, Monroe said flatly. Flushed and fuming, Charlene muttered out the details. Monroe relayed them. Then he listened a moment longer. His jaw clenched. "Yes, sir. We will remove ourselves from the cabin." He returned the phone to the gate agent like it was radioactive. Charlene looked from Monroe to the agent to Adeline, who hadn't moved an inch. No yelling, no scene. Just one quiet girl and one very powerful voice on the other end of a phone. And suddenly, everyone understood. They'd been speaking to the wrong person all along. Captain Rhodes stepped out of the cockpit, confusion already written across his face. He'd been briefed mid-prep. A passenger conflict, followed by an urgent systems alert from corporate. Now, a gate agent handed him a phone. "This is Mr. Pierce," she said, barely above a whisper. The captain's brow furrowed. "The Mr. Pierce?" He pressed the phone to his ear. The conversation was short, one-sided, and surgically precise. His face paled, then hardened. He nodded once, ended the call, and turned to face the front of the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, voice steady but clipped. "Due to an urgent operational directive, Flight 448 to Munich is cancelled, effective immediately. The cabin erupted. What? Cancelled? For what? We haven't even pushed back. This is absurd. Charlene stepped forward. Captain, there's no reason. He held up a hand. Don't speak. The businessman in 1B leaned back, arms folded. Looks like someone finally made a bigger call than yours, he muttered. Adeline said nothing. Captain Rhodes scanned the crowd, then focused on Charlene. You're relieved of duty for this flight. Please go to the rear galley and remain there until further instruction. Charlene flushed. You can't just… I can, he said sharply. And I just did. 2 corporate staff members appeared at the cabin door. The head of JFK station operations stepped forward, face tight. Miss Pierce, she said gently, we're arranging a private jet to Munich. Your father has requested full priority handling. Charlene's face crumbled, from smug queen of the aisle to the woman nobody would make eye contact with. Adeline looked straight ahead, unmoving. For the first time, she wasn't the one being escorted out. The plane hadn't taken off, but someone had already been grounded. By the time Adeline stepped off the plane, the damage was already done, just not to her. The terminal was buzzing, phones were out, screens were lighting up. A clip was already circulating, a quiet teenage girl being told she didn't belong in first class, followed by an officer going pale mid-call, and a captain canceling a transatlantic flight. Hashtags were multiplying. Seat 1A. Who is her dad? Hacked Pierce protocol. Adeline didn't check her phone. She didn't need to. She followed the JFK station manager, Eleanor Vance, down a private corridor. The woman kept her voice low, respectful. Your luggage and violin have been retrieved. A private driver is waiting. Your jet will be ready in under 2 hours. And, on behalf of the entire airport, I'm sorry. Adeline nodded politely. She was still processing. Behind her, the ripple effects were already hitting. Charlene sat alone in the crew break room, her phone vibrating nonstop. Calls from union reps, missed messages from supervisors. Her name was trending, for all the wrong reasons. When she clicked on the video, her face appeared within seconds. Freeze frame. Her leaning over, smirking, trying to pull power she never had. The comments were brutal. This is why training isn't optional. She treated a disabled child like a threat. Fire her, period. She closed the app, but the dread sat like stone in her gut. Back inside the airport operations center, FAA compliance officers were already making calls. One memo from BlueShield had shaken the room. Immediate suspension of ethical clearance for 3 major airlines, pending review. It wasn't just about one flight anymore. Adeline sat quietly in the private lounge, sipping warm tea. No one bothered her. No questions. No flashing lights. The man from seat 1B had sent a message to her father offering to testify. The gate agent had filed an internal report confirming Charlene lied. The officer was under review. And Adeline? She was finally still. Not because she had fought, but because someone else had listened. And now, the world was listening too. At 5:42 a.m. Geneva time, Colin Pierce issued a 2-sentence command from his hotel suite. Initiate full ethics lockout for TransAero, Sky Atlantic, and NovaJet. Notify FAA and the ICA immediately. By 6:10, the system was blinking red. BlueShield Aeroethica, the ethical compliance network Colin helped build over 2 decades, had never been triggered at this scale. Not once. Until now. The 3 airlines were instantly marked non-compliant across 61 international airports. That meant no takeoffs, no landings, no gate access. Not for an hour. Not until they requalified under the Pierce Protocol, a certification process that required executive retraining, public acknowledgement of bias violations, and full transparency in employee conduct records. By 7 o'clock a.m. EST, Over $2.6 billion in pending aircraft insurance and loan-backed credit was frozen. Investment banks pulled margin buffers. Airport alliances suspended scheduling priority. In boardrooms across New York, London, and Singapore, red alerts hit screens no one thought they'd ever see, and all of it started with Seat 1A. Inside her quiet lounge at JFK, Adeline didn't know the full picture yet. She was sipping warm lemon water, her blanket folded beside her. A staffer had brought her gluten-free snacks and asked nothing in return. She scrolled Twitter for a moment, saw her own face trending, and locked the phone again. She didn't want to be famous. She just wanted to land without being questioned. Charlene got the email at 8:04. Your access badge has been temporarily revoked pending investigation. You are not authorized to enter any Trans-Aero facility or aircraft. Please await further instructions. She read it twice, then once more, and realized the plane didn't just leave without her. The industry might too. The private jet was quiet, even quieter than the first-class cabin she never got to leave. No flight attendant hovered. No announcements interrupted the hum of the engines. Just Adeline, her blanket, her violin case strapped safely in the seat beside her, and the space to breathe. She stared out the window at nothing. The sun was rising over the Atlantic, but the sky felt gray. For the first time since boarding Flight 448, her body had stopped trembling. But her mind? It wouldn't. She thought about that moment. Charlene's voice, icy and smug. This section is reserved for premium passengers, as if she were a glitch in the system. Not a girl with a diagnosis. Not a human being. She hadn't cried on the plane. Not when security was called. Not when people stared. Not even when the captain canceled the flight. But now, alone in this floating sanctuary, the ache found its way out. She didn't sob. She didn't fall apart. She just let the tears come, quietly, without shame. Her dad was sitting across from her, laptop open but untouched. He didn't interrupt. He waited. And when she was ready, she spoke. I didn't want it to become all this. I know, Colin said gently. I just wanted to get to Munich, that's all. I didn't want to trend, or go viral, or be some symbol. You weren't a symbol, he said. You were a daughter, being treated like a problem. Adeline looked down at her hands. I hate how small it made me feel. Colin leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You weren't small, he said. They were. They saw someone who didn't match their script, and instead of asking questions, they assumed. She was silent for a beat, then asked the one question that had been weighing on her since the moment the plane was canceled. Did I ruin people's lives? Colin exhaled slowly. No, he said. They ruined their own. You didn't lie. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't try to humiliate anyone. But now 3 airlines are grounded, she whispered. People are out of work. Charlene, she probably can't show her face anywhere. She was willing to humiliate you publicly, Colin said, without hesitation, without cause, and she's not alone. This wasn't about one person. This was about a pattern. He paused. You know what they call the system we built at BlueShield? Adeline shook her head. Ethics architecture. It's not meant to punish, he continued. It's meant to stop damage before it spreads. And when people like Charlene ignore the blueprint, they don't just break a rule. They compromise safety. Dignity is safety, Addie. Especially for people like you. She blinked. People like me? I don't mean your condition. I mean your quiet, your stillness, your refusal to play loud just to be heard. She swallowed hard. I spent years thinking I was broken, she said, because I couldn't handle noise, or crowds, or bright lights. You're not broken, he said softly. You're built differently, but the system wasn't built for you. She met his eyes. So we rebuild it. He smiled. We already started. Later that night, while Colin spoke on a secure call with BlueShield's board, Adeline sat with her violin. She didn't play, not yet. Just rested it on her shoulder like an anchor. She thought about all the other kids like her. The ones who wore noise-canceling headphones in class and got labeled rude. The ones who sat out of gym because textures made their skin crawl. The ones who knew what they needed, but weren't believed. Maybe now someone would listen, not because she made a scene, but because she didn't. It started with a memo. At 8:07 a.m. EST, the FAA's Office of Civil Aviation Ethics issued a public notice. Effective immediately, Transaero, Sky Atlantic, and NovaJet will undergo emergency ethics audits under the Passenger Treatment Compliance Act, PTCA. The statement wasn't long, but the impact hit hard. Each airline was now subject to a 30-day operational hold on international routes. And for the first time in history, the FAA made the audits public. Live, unedited. Footage from the JFK terminal, the one where Adeline had been confronted, was reviewed line by line on national television. Charlene's face, her voice, her smirk. The words, "Premium passenger only." Then, the phone call, the shift, the fall. By noon, Charlene was officially terminated. Not suspended, not under review. Terminated. The FAA cited violation of civil dignity codes, abuse of authority, and racial profiling adjacency. Union lawyers tried to spin it. They said Charlene was under stress. They blamed confusing passenger records. But the video didn't lie. In Geneva, Colin Pierce stood before a global board of ethics partners. He had canceled meetings with aerospace manufacturers and investment banks to be here, because this moment was bigger than contracts. He clicked to the next slide. A single phrase filled the screen. Dignity is not optional. Below it, the draft of a new charter, the passenger ethics framework, mandatory retraining, transparency of passenger removals, a 24-hour review panel for crew-pushed offloads, quarterly ethics scoring tied directly to FAA route access. One board member asked, "Won't this cost the industry billions?" Colin replied, "Not implementing it will cost lives." At JFK, Adeline's face still trended under Howard's seat 1A. But the tone had changed. It wasn't shock anymore, it was solidarity. Parents of autistic children began posting their stories. Young travelers shared how they'd been questioned, downgraded, or ignored. One viral comment read, "She didn't just stay in her seat, she held the line for all of us." Back at Transaero's headquarters, silence filled the executive floor. The CEO, Dean Carver, stared at the ethics notice on his screen. BlueShield status, non-compliant, FAA access, temporarily suspended partner, airports, 61 revoked. He turned to his legal chief. "How did this happen?" She didn't respond, because deep down, they all knew. It didn't start with a lawsuit, or a scandal, or a boycott. It started when they told the wrong girl she didn't belong. Adeline, meanwhile, was finally landing in Munich. Not on a delayed flight, not on a downgraded seat, but on her own time, her own jet. The moment the wheels touched down, she looked out the window. She wasn't the same girl who boarded Flight 448, and neither was the world she landed in. 3 weeks later, the U.S. Senate chamber was packed. Cameras rolled, reporters scribbled, and every seat behind the witness bench was filled. Parents, advocates, disability rights lawyers, and quietly, survivors of humiliation no one had seen. Adeline wasn't supposed to speak. She hadn't prepared remarks. She wasn't there to be the center. But when the second panelist fumbled through technical jargon, a senator leaned forward and said, "Would Miss Pierce like to share her experience?" There was a pause. Colin turned to her, gently. "It's up to you." Adeline stood. No notes, no mic check, just her. "I never wanted to be famous," she began. "I wanted to go to Munich, to play violin, to sit in my seat without being questioned." The chamber was still. "I was told I didn't belong, not because of my ticket, but because I didn't look like someone who'd sit in 1A. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. And that's what made the words sharper. I've spent years learning how to stay calm when things feel wrong. But staying calm shouldn't mean being invisible. Senator Vargas, co-sponsor of the proposed Seat 1A Act, leaned into the mic. This legislation, she said, would require mandatory bias training for flight staff, real-time FAA audits of passenger removals, and a transparent ethics score system tied to federal clearance. But more than that, this law acknowledges what too many ignore. She looked toward Adeline. That dignity isn't just a word. It's how we decide who matters. The hearing closed with standing applause, but the ripple had just begun. Within days, 19 airlines signed early letters of intent supporting the bill. The FAA pledged to integrate the Seat 1A metrics into airport contract renewals. Several airports initiated gate equity zones, prioritizing accessibility, quiet boarding, and monitored staff behavior. Parents wrote in, musicians wrote in, and so did a woman from Idaho who'd once been kicked off a plane for asking for a gluten-free meal. Adeline didn't go on a press tour. She didn't take interviews. She simply returned to music school and played the piece she had planned to debut in Munich, this time for a benefit concert supporting neurodiverse travelers. No one asked for her boarding pass that night, and no one ever will again. The Senate rotunda hadn't seen a crowd this dense in years, but this wasn't a protest. It was a reckoning. One by one, the CEOs of Transaero, Sky Atlantic, and NovaJet filed in, flanked by general counsels and PR staff who looked like they hadn't slept in days. The chair of the Senate Transportation Committee wasted no time. "You are here," she began, "because your airlines failed to uphold the minimum dignity owed to every passenger, especially the quiet ones, the disabled ones, the different ones." No one spoke. Then she lifted the folder in front of her. The Seat 1 Ethics Accord, a 42-page living document that outlined a mandatory third-party ethics review every fiscal quarter, transparent reporting of all passenger removals and disputes, mandatory neurodiversity and disability awareness training for every crew member, FAA route priority tied to an airline's ethical compliance score, and a public ethics dashboard viewable by all travelers. She looked up. "This is no longer a request. It is a condition of access. Either you sign this accord, or your access to 84 federal routes will be suspended indefinitely." The room didn't gasp. They knew it was coming. One by one, the CEOs signed. Some begrudgingly, some with silent nods. None dared object, because the world was watching. Meanwhile, across the world, airports from Tokyo to Toronto began re-evaluating their ethics protocols. In Oslo, an airline quietly announced its own Seat 1A standard. In Johannesburg, 2 carriers joined the accord voluntarily. In Chicago, 5 whistleblowers were reinstated after having flagged bias cases years before. It had begun, not just a new policy, a new industry culture. Back in New York, Colin Pierce sat alone in a quiet lounge overlooking LaGuardia's tarmac. No press, no cameras. Just a man watching planes take off. Differently. His phone buzzed. A text from Adeline. "They signed it?" He smiled. "They signed it." Then another text. "Cool. Can we talk about dinner now?" Change had come. Not through protest, not through outrage, but through one seat. And the girl who refused to give it up. 2 months later, Adeline flew again. No private jet. No security escort, no backdoor terminal, just her and her violin, just another girl catching another flight. This time, her name was on the manifest before she arrived. She didn't ask for anything special, but when she approached the gate, the attendant didn't ask questions. He smiled, checked her ID, and said simply, "Welcome aboard, Miss Pierce. Seat 1A, same number, different weight." She placed her violin case gently in the overhead, buckled her belt, and pulled out her noise-canceling headphones. The world outside the window looked the same, but inside, everything had changed. Not just for her. Halfway through the flight, a flight attendant approached. A new one. Younger, nervous. "Excuse me," she said softly. "I just wanted to say thank you." Adeline looked up. "My sister's autistic. the woman said. "She saw your video. She said it was the first time she felt seen. She's never even been on a plane, but she wants to now." Adeline blinked, surprised. "She asked me to tell you that." The attendant smiled, then gently placed a folded note in Adeline's hand before stepping away. The handwriting was messy, blue ink, teenage loops. "Dear Seat 1A girl, I used to think people like me couldn't travel. Now I think maybe we just weren't invited. But you made it a little easier for the next me. Thank you for sitting still. Thank you for staying. You made space for someone like me. Lily, age 14. Adeline folded the note slowly. She didn't cry, but she smiled. A quiet, full kind of smile. Not because she had changed the world, but because she'd shifted one door, opened one seat for someone else to board. As the wheels touched down, the pilot's voice came over the speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. We'd like to thank you for flying with us, especially those seated in first class, including, of course, seat 1A. A few passengers chuckled, some clapped. Adeline didn't say a word. She just reached for her violin case, stood up, and walked forward. Not a viral name, not a protester, not a problem, just a girl in seat 1A, exactly where she belonged. Tell us, have you or someone you love ever been made to feel like they didn't belong, even when they had every right to be there? We'd love to hear your story in the comments. And if Adeline's quiet strength moved you even just a little, hit that like button to make sure her message reaches one more person who needs it. Don't forget to subscribe to Telltales for more stories where the quietest voice ends up making the loudest change. We'll see you in the next one.